Ladies and gentlemen, today we are privileged to hear from one of the top experts in the area of energy in Mexico. As many of you may know, successive Mexican governments have sought for over a decade to restructure the hydrocarbons sector. The goal has been to encourage private firms to invest capital and technology, especially in the production of natural gas. Mexico is rich in gas, yet production has languished. Meanwhile, demand for gas in Mexico has soared because gas is the fuel of choice for generating electricity. Mexico's energy reforms are a highly politicized issue, in part because any substantial change in policy will require amending the Mexican Constitution. In recent years, the political effort has focused on the Mexican Congress, and the epicenter of that effort is a critical committee chaired by Congressman Francisco Salazar. Aside from being the chairman of the Energy Committee at the Chamber of Deputies of the Mexican Congress, representing the 6th District of San Luis Potosí, he is also a member of the Budget Committee. Prior to serving at the Chamber, Francisco Salazar started his career as a businessman in the LPQ Group in 1991, a partnership company oriented to the import and distribution of specialty chemicals. What there is to know about energy in the private or public sector in Mexico could not come from a more knowledgeable speaker, and join me in welcoming Congressman Francisco Salazar to the podium.
Good afternoon to every one of you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. And I would like to thank the Baker Institute for inviting me to give you this presentation. I would like to thank David Victor, who was the one who invited me for the first time. And what I will try to do today is to give you an outlook of what is going on in Mexico in terms of natural gas. So let me start by describing the legal framework of the natural gas in Mexico. The first thing that we have to take into account is what the ambassador has just said. Anything that deals with natural gas, it starts from the Constitution. So the Constitution states that natural gas is a property of the nation, and that it is only the nation through the state-owned company that can handle the production of gas. Besides the Constitution, there are also 2 or 3 laws that give us the legal framework for natural gas. First, we have the Oil and Gas Act. This law is nothing but a more detailed description of what it's written in the Constitution. And of course, we also have a law that tells us what is Pemex, the state-owned company, allowed to do, and how they have to work. Also, there are some other regulations, especially the natural gas regulation, which is mainly devoted to the areas where the private sector can work, which is basically the downstream operations. Within our legal framework, all the upstream operations are in the hands of the state. And the exploration, the production, and the first-hand sales have to be taken care of by Pemex, which is the state-owned company. Exploration and production recently has been allowed to be contracted through a scheme that I will talk later, which is called the multiple service contract scheme. Besides that, there is no more private investment allowed within the upstream activities. In the case of the downstream activities, the private sector is allowed to distribute, to transport, and to storage natural gas. And that was basically done during 1995, 1996, when the Oil and Gas Act was modified. recognizing that although the gas belongs to the nation and it's property of the nation, the distribution and all the other activities that go downstream can be handled by the private sector. According to this legal framework, what you will see is that obviously all the gas processing centers in Mexico are owned by Pemex, but also most of the pipelines, transport, is mainly handled by the state through Pemex. There are some pipelines that are owned by private investors, but as you can see in that map, they are not as long as the pipelines that Pemex have. And also, the distribution is handled by the private sector. This is something that has started since probably 10 years ago. And right now we are having a really large expansion of natural gas distribution. As probably some of you know, LPG was used as the main gas fuel in Mexico until these changes occurred during the recent years. Let me just briefly talk about the demand outlook. Basically what you have here is the government forecast of what will happen, the government outlook. This forecast or this outlook has been questioned by some consulting firms, and it's probably seen as a very optimistic scenario. And although I agree with the fact that the average annual rate of growth wouldn't be probably as large as almost 7%, I think that it is not very far from that. As you can see, within the next 9 years, most of the growth, as in all the world, for natural gas consumption will come from the power industry. If you can put me the next slide. Most of the new plants that will be constructed in Mexico will be based on the combined cycle technology, which uses natural gas. But it's not only because of all the new plants that will be under the IPP scheme, but also the plants that are part of CFE and that right now work with some fossil fuels will be converted to natural gas. So that's why we'll have a lot of demand from the power sector in terms of natural gas. Now, let's see what's happening in terms of the supply. In terms of the supply, most of the current fields are declining now. So Pemex and the government have proposed what they call the strategic programming gas, which includes a lot of investment in new fields, but also what it's known as the multiple service contracts, which is a scheme that will allow private investment besides the investment that it's taken care of by the budget. If we add all this supply, we'll have that Mexico by year 2010 will probably be producing 7.3 billion cubic feet per day. And as you can see, if you compare that with the demand, there's always a gap. So Mexico has to import some natural gas. Most of the imports currently are, well, all the imports right now are coming from the United States, which is a net importer. And that's a really big problem. So that's why a lot of LNG terminals have been proposed to be constructed in Mexico. The scenario would be that with those LNG terminals, we would be only importing probably about 0.3 BCFs a day by year 2010. The government is not very optimistic about how fast these LNG terminals will move. So let's talk about a little bit more about the import infrastructure. Obviously, right now we have some pipelines that allow imports from the United States. We have 15 crossing points that allow us to import 3 BCFs a day. And right now, Shell has started the construction of an LNG terminal in Altamira. All of these LNG, all of this natural gas will be for CFE, which is the state-owned electricity company. And as a matter of fact, the very fact that CFE will have its own source of natural gas is something that has improved the willingness for bidders to participate in the IPP scheme. This is we have just had a new bid, and contrary to what we had seen during the last years, there were a lot of offerings, and mainly it's because CFE is guaranteeing the supply of natural gas for the new plants. And besides that LNG terminal in Altamira, there are several other projects which are under review of the regulatory committee, the Comisión Reguladora de Energía. It is my point of view that only 2 terminals will be constructed in the Pacific. I don't think that more than 2 terminals will be economically feasible. And if you were going to ask me which terminals I think will prosper, I think one will prosper in Baja California, and there we have 3 projects. One which is still waiting for the approval, which is the Chevron Texaco terminal in front of the Coronado Island. And then we also have 2 other permits that have already been granted to Shell and to Sempra, which have decided to form a joint venture and to construct a plant. However, there is some problems because there is some kind of dispute with some people that live nearby this area. So in terms of permits, those terminals have been approved, but I'm not sure if because of this local concern, these terminals will be in fact constructed. And there is a chance that the Chevron Texaco will be more feasible because there is not a lot of concern of the people. However, there are some environmental concerns, so it also has a problem. The other terminal that will be constructed and that I think has a really good chance of going on is the terminal at Lázaro Cárdenas. There, the local authorities have already granted all the permits, and the only permit that it's pending is the federal permit. And so I think that's one terminal that will go on. So that's what we have in terms of import infrastructure. Now, besides that, what the government is doing is relying on the multiple service contract scheme. What are the multiple service contracts? Well, basically, those are public works contracts under which the contractors are paid based on unit prices, and in order to comply with the constitutional requirements, the contractors do not own the natural gas, and they do not own the works performed there. So they have to give that to Pemex, and also they receive a cash payment, so they cannot register the reserves under their name also. This scheme has been strongly pushed by the government in order to do something besides what they're doing with the strategic gas program and the investment done by Pemex by itself. But even with that scheme, as you can see, there will be still a gap for imports. But let me talk a little bit more about the MSC scheme. Right now, this scheme is being used in the Burgos Basin. There, as you probably know, there is a very similar geological condition to that, to the one in the south of Texas. And the government is expecting that if this scheme goes just the way they think, the production in the Burgos Basin could be increased by threefold. So up to this moment, they have awarded 5 multiple service contracts, and as you can see in this chart, these contracts have been awarded first to Repsol, to Petrobras, who has 2 blocks, and to Techint, and also to Luis Energy, the one that is near to El Paso. Okay, those 5 contracts have been awarded, but still there are 2 other blocks that are pending that during last year didn't receive any proposal, and which are Ricos and Corindón Pandura. If this scheme goes ahead, then Pemex would be willing to not only continue with this program for natural gas, so they would probably try to push this program with some oil production, especially inshore. So that's something that the government is still pushing, but again, I think it will be limited. What are the benefits of the multiple service contracts so far? Well, in terms of investment, they have attracted around $4.3 billion. And they will represent savings of more than $800 million for Pemex. As a matter of fact, these contracts or these multiple service contracts are not very different of what Pemex used to do before. The only main difference is that instead of having probably 500 or 1,000 different contracts, they are hiring one single company that will work as the main contractor, and this company will be able to make some outsourcing for the project. In terms of additional production, with these 5 projects, we'll have 440 million cubic feet per day. The idea would be that this scheme could yield almost 1 billion cubic feet per day, but it's going to take some time. We need the other 2 blocks to be awarded. In terms of currency savings, because there is a problem also with currency savings, we are importing gas from a country that it's a net importer. It would represent $800 million per year. And obviously one thing that is very important for Mexicans and for governors in these states is job creation. And these contracts will represent about 5,000 new jobs in this area. However, let me go back to this chart. As you can see, even if this scheme goes successful, there will still be a large amount of imports that will have to be done into Mexico. And this is creating some kind of pressure on the Congress to move for other options. And so if I should list what are the driving forces for more market openness in Mexico, obviously, from what I've said before, there is a strong demand growth. The domestic supply is very fixed, is not very flexible, it's limited, and obviously Pemex has constraints in terms of execution capabilities and in terms of financial resources. And other 2 things that are very important is that right now Mexico is suffering a lot of from the in terms of it's losing its competitiveness, and the industrial sector is pushing very hard for new reforms, so they do not take all the pain from very high and volatile prices in natural gas. So I think that one main driving force right now to push for more open market, is that the private sector is really very concerned about the high prices in natural gas. And besides that, I mean, if Mexico didn't have natural gas resources, it would be a problem. But Mexico has a lot of gas resources. Only less than 25% of the territory has been explored. And if you talk about offshore exploration, it's less than 5%. So there's still a lot to be discovered. So with this potential, there is a lot of, obviously, there is a very good motivation for a more open market environment. So in terms of that, what is under discussion at the Chamber of Deputies? Okay, two scenarios or 2 alternatives. The first alternative would be an upstream liberalization. Under that scheme, basically, the private sector will be allowed to obtain concessions for natural gas. I think this scheme would be very attractive because it would introduce competition at the upstream level, and it is also supported by the industrial sector. The Mexican industrial sector wants to invest in natural gas. They want to do it not only because of what it's costing them, but because they want to really be part of this business. And the other important thing in political terms is that this scheme is being supported by other parties. As a matter of fact, a constitutional amendment bill was presented by a former deputy of the PRI. So this gives a lot of room in order to push this reform. So this is one scenario. Another scenario, or the other thing that we are trying to push is, if we don't have that, so then at least let us consider to reform the Pemex law and the Constitution, so Pemex can form joint ventures or associations with other companies. Although this scheme has been mainly thought for deep waters, in terms of natural gas, some people are saying that it would be a very good idea to do that also. And it has also some support from other parties. The very interesting thing is that the left parties, PRD, and the left sectors within PRI, would be willing to push more for this alternative, because they have seen that in the next years, if nothing is done in Pemex, Pemex will be in trouble. So they are willing to reform the Constitution in order to allow Pemex to be part of joint ventures or associations with private investors. However, in both cases, the important thing is that we need a constitutional amendment. Okay, what is the scenario if an upstream liberalization occurs? This is something that has been done by the private sector. The private sector hired a consultant, and they obviously this was made about 1 or 2 years ago, and if they were supposing that this could be probably done by year 2004. And in starting in 2004, they thought that if this private sector, if private sector is allowed to do some exploration and production of gas, we would, instead of being an importer, we could become an exporter. Probably this is a very optimistic scenario, but at least this is something that has been done. And what is more important, this study that was hired by the private sector was predicting that if this export scenario would go on, there could be an impact in terms of the prices for the region. Probably it's too optimistic, but at least I think it would have some kind of impact in terms of the prices. Now, the thing is that these scenarios require, as I said, a constitutional reform. And modifying the Constitution, amending the Constitution in Mexico, as in most countries, is a very complex process. First, you require a successive discussion and approval of both chambers, not only Chamber of Deputies, but Senate. And also, the local congresses have a lot to say about this. They have to approve it as well, or at least more than the half of the local congress have to vote in favor of the constitutional amendment. Obviously, there's a veto power that the president has, but if something like this goes on, of course, the president wouldn't veto these modifications. The president is in favor of opening the upstream sector in terms of natural gas, so that wouldn't be a problem. The problem is that in order to reform the Constitution, we need a very big majority. We need at least 2/3 of the votes. So let's see what's the composition of the Mexican Congress. As you can see, no party by itself has the 2/3 required to pass the constitutional amendment. So what this implies is that at least two parties, and basically the PRI and the PAN, have to go together for a constitutional amendment. So this is tough, but based on the fact that the first bill was presented by PRI and that the other bill is also supported by some left-wing members of the PRI, I think there is some chance that this could go on. And obviously, the private sector, again, is pushing very hard for these modifications. Okay, let me conclude with some final comments. Obviously, in order to develop the its economy, Mexico requires a lot of energy. Not only natural gas, but electricity. And electricity requires, obviously, natural gas. And importing gas from the region where the prices are the highest in the world and where the country that exports the gas is a net importer, it's something that doesn't sound logical. And besides, when Mexico has a lot of potential in natural gas, this is something that it just doesn't sound okay. So the government has taken some steps, and they are in the current direction. I mean, the multiple service scheme is a good thing, but they are not enough. if Mexico wants to become an exporter or at least reduce its dependency from imports from the United States, it has to invest large amounts of money, and it also has to open up the upstream activities to private sector. Of course, all of these modifications would be in the best interest of Mexico and national sovereignty. So that's it. Thank you very much.
The congressman is willing to take a few questions. You just raise your hands if there are any questions from the audience. The gentleman in the back.
Because of the impact in prices. I mean, if you talk with the Chevron, Texaco, with the Tractable, Repsol, or the BP guys, they will also tell you that it's very difficult for more than 2 terminals to be, especially if you think about Lázaro Cárdenas, the cost of transporting that gas will make it not economical. So that's the main reason. But excuse me, but those are terminals in the Pacific. We have the other terminal in the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah. Yes. Obviously, the political environment right now in Mexico is very complicated, but at the same time, if we look forward for the next federal election, what everyone is expecting is that that a very similar situation will occur. No party will have majority at the Congress. So solving this problem right now will be a benefit for the next president. So since all the parties are thinking they will win the presidency, there's an incentive to do this right now, because doing it in the future would be even more complicated. That's an incentive. So we are pushing that very hard. And besides, in a presidential system with more than 2 parties, it's very difficult to, if the government doesn't have a majority in the Congress, it's very hard to push these kind of agreements. But on the other hand, because all the opposition parties are looking for a failure of the government so they can become the next party in power. But at the same time, if you see that the benefits of these reforms will not be during this presidential term, but during the next term, then it's sensible to do them right now, because the next president will gain all the benefits of doing this. Topolobampo, yes. Well, it hasn't been approved. It's another option. It's another option that it's being considered. But either Topolobampo, there's another one. I haven't included it because, these projects have been presented, but so far there are no. There hasn't been a submit of the official permit. So there's another one in Manzanillo, but. Manzanillo and Lázaro Cárdenas couldn't be at the same time. So any of those 2, or probably Topolobampo. Which one? Can we put that slide? Yes, of course. Well, the currency savings is because right now we're importing from a country where the price is very high. The production cost in Mexico is very low, so that's why you would save their money. Yes, but of course. But that's the way, in a certain sense, yes, you're right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Congressman. One question. All right. Last question.
No, they're still linked to the Henry Hub price. So that's why there's a lot of volatility and the prices are very high in Mexico. That's one issue that the private sector is looking forward to correct. But the problem is that if we reduce the prices, then I think we could create a larger problem because, I mean, with lower prices, the demand would grow for the product and the gap would be even larger. So I don't think it's a very good idea to reduce the prices. That would be a sensible thing to do right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Congressman.